to the Sacred Stream radio podcast. I'm Laura Chandler, and my guest today is author, filmmaker, and psychotherapist Stephanie James. And we're talking about her latest book, Your Big Fat Juicy Life and Everything After. Stephanie, welcome.
Thank you, Laura. It's so wonderful to be here with you.
It's so great to have you. We've had some wonderful conversations, and it's just so nice to get to continue that on the podcast and to share it with our listeners. And I'm really excited about your book. And I'm wondering if we can start with just what inspired you to write it?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Well, it's so interesting to me because it was a year ago in March that I was interviewing Neil Donald Walsh for my show, Igniting the Spark, my podcast. And we got on that call and we could not get to the interview. I mean, we were just having this personal, like a heart-to-heart connection. And you see at one point, Neil gets a download and he just kind of stops the conversation and he says, Stephanie, you're going to write your next book and you're going to start tomorrow morning. And this book is going to have a global impact and I'm going to endorse this book. And now for the people in your audience who might not know who Neil Donald Walsh is, he's the gentleman who wrote Conversations with God in the 90s and 5 million copies sold. Plus. And so, I just laugh and say, well, I guess even though we all speak to God, I'm like, if the guy who talks to God said you're going to write a book, I guess I better show up and write it.
Yes.
So that was really the motivation to show up. And then really what came through was this book about how death isn't the end for us. The book was really about life, but it's about how death isn't the end, but just the next chapter in our book of eternity. And how when we can start befriending death, the concept of death, then we can more, I think we're showing up in this moment, where this moment really does become then the sacred moment, because we're not living in fear. So we move out of fear and into love.
When you talk about befriending death, can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Especially in America, death is still the number one fear people have, death in public speaking. And so befriending it means that we quit having it be taboo to talk about, that we start inviting in these conversations where death isn't something that we fear and we have to whisper about. One of the things I talk about in the book is something that started going on around the country are these death dinners where people get really dressed up and they have this beautiful gourmet meal. And the plan is to sit together and talk about death. And so it makes it so it's not a taboo subject anymore. And so part of befriending it is we get more comfortable that, yes, it's going to be a part of our journey. It's a part of our loved ones and our friends' journeys. And then it's really okay. Even though we go through grief, and there's a chapter in the book all around dealing with grief. This isn't just about, okay, we're all going to be happy now and everything is about only embracing the positive emotion. It's like, how do we truly, in befriending death, we befriend our complete experience of all of our emotions.
Yes. But yeah, this isn't a book about spiritual bypass. This is a book that offers some real wisdom and offers some tips for navigating these difficult emotions and befriending death. And you talk about grief and you talk about ways of being present with difficult emotions like grief. Do you want to offer some more information about that or talk a little more about how we do that?
Yes, I think part of, and I think it's really important too, because this book isn't, again, just about also grief or about death. It really is about how do we plug into life.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the way we do that is embracing whatever shows up in this moment. and it's being present to it. So instead of, like you said, doing the spiritual bypass or trying to suppress, when we push our emotions down like a beach ball, we're trying to push it down underwater. Inevitably, it's going to pop back up and smack us in the face. So it's being with those emotions. And I always refer to Rumi's poem, The Guest House. Mm. And I do not remember it. I don't have it by heart, but the part that always stay with me are the beginning of that poem that says, "This being human, this is a guest house, and every day a new arrival comes. Some meanness, some depression, sadness come, and it says, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond."
Mm.
Now, that's the shortest and probably worst summarization of that gorgeous poem. And yet the essence hopefully comes through because it really is about it's okay. Yes, we're going to have those times where we feel gutted. We're going to have those times of deep sorrow. And when we are able to be present to that experience, it clears us out so that we do have room then to experience the joy at a fuller, deeper level. We become that clearer container. I think of us as being conduit for love and joy and feeling to come to us and through us. And so it helps to clear out those cobwebs when we can just embrace what's here.
Well, I think that you did a wonderful job summarizing the poem. And, one of the things that I was just having a conversation with a friend this morning, in fact, about how people are seeking to arrive. They're trying to arrive at something so that then they've reached a peak and these bad things don't happen. And I think intellectually, most people know that, know that's not true, but I think there's still a striving that can happen where we're trying to get past the bad parts so we have the good parts, and what you're talking about in the book and is really being neutral to the positive and the negative. I don't know, maybe I put words in your mouth there, but being receiving equanimously both, so that you're not y- you know gutted or overly attached and elated to something. Is that a fair description?
Yes, I think that's so great. It's so point on because so often people will say, "Oh, when do I, like you said, when do I arrive? When do I get to finish this? When is that point?" And we never get to that point. Spoiler alert, we never get to that point. And so it's actually embracing what is. And do we learn how to deal with the ups and downs much better as we continue this journey and we continue to embrace what shows up? Absolutely. So sometimes, even though none of us are immune from the difficult and challenging times that will continue to happen, we are better able to deal with them as they arise because we're dealing with them from a place of resourcefulness. We're dealing with them from a place where we haven't been clinging so tightly to things. Oh my gosh, they have to be a certain way and they have to be good. We're in a place where we're folding it all. And from that place, it's like we ride the waves of our life in such a much more beautiful way.
Yes, yes. And you know what struck me about the book is it's also a deeply personal book. You share some really big events in your life, and you make it it's that are very relatable and accessible. Um, so, maybe we can talk a little bit about some of your experiences and how they taught you this to be more to navigate.
Yeah, thank you. I would say too, part of what for me was such a joy about writing this book was one of the wonderful things was it came through, and I didn't say this when you were talking about maybe the inspiration for the book, but I think it's important to note this book came through in under 6 weeks. And my first 2 books each took 9 months apiece to write. It was like gestating a pregnancy.
Yes.
Um, and in 6 weeks, I had amazing humans come forward that wanted to be a part of the book, like Wayne Dyer's daughter, Sage Dyer, and Wayne's wife, Marceline, and Academy Award winner Stephen Simon, who did the beautiful film What Dreams May Come, and all adding into their stories as well, that this isn't all there is. This 3D experience isn't all there is. And so I do share, for me, it was very vulnerable sharing. As a psychotherapist and transformation coach, I haven't shared these personal, really spiritual and life altering events that have happened to me along my journey and have been happening since I was a child.
Mhm.
One of the most profound, though, that I'll share with your listeners, because even though at a very young age, I mean, I was about 5 or 6 years old when I have a vivid memory to this day of standing downstairs in my parents' home. I can tell you what the multicolored rug looked like. I was staring at my grandmother's antique dresser. She had this buffet dresser. And I had the really clear thought as a little girl, like, oh, I can't remember being born. And in that, this wisdom of like, oh, we never die. We're never born. This just keeps going. And so while I had that knowingness within me, I still, I grew up and I remember crying to my dad at one point and saying, I don't want anything bad to happen to anyone. And I had this awareness there were quote unquote bad people in the world that hurt people. And so I did have that fear of death, just like everyone, I think. But that was changed and transformed forever, when I was 25 and I was a single mother. I had a beautiful 4-year-old daughter. And this what it happened was absolutely what changed my life experience. And so I'll share that story with you because I think it's so powerful. Um, I was literally in the bathtub, and this is back in the day of, the huge, big portaphones we used to have, and the phone rang, and my little daughter, Acacia, grabbed the phone and brought it in to me. And I always have to stop and mention that Acacia is the Greek word for immortality.
Mhm.
And we know the tree of life is, the acacia tree. Well, I had no idea when I named her that she was going to be the one teaching me about immortality. And so Acacia gave me the phone, and it was my mother. And my mother told me that my Aunt Gwen, who had been struggling with breast cancer for the last 5 years at that point, had gone in for exploratory surgery that day. And when they opened her up, they had found that the cancer it had spread throughout her entire body. And so my mom said, they basically sewed her back up when they're saying she's got about 3 months to live. And so I started crying. Acacia came back into the bed or into the bathroom and she said, Mama, why are you crying? And I said, oh, sweetheart, Mama just doesn't want anyone to die. And she sits on the side of the tub and she just looks at me and she goes, well, Mama, we never die. And then I thought, well, of course she's thinking we go to heaven, even though we didn't talk about heaven or religion, anything like that. But I said, oh, honey, I know we go to heaven. And she looks at me again and just kind of shakes her little head. And she's like, Mama, there's no heaven. She said, when I was a light up in the sky with God, and then she pauses and she says, do you remember your other mother, Dorothy? And I'm like, oh my God. My other mother, Dorothy, died when I was 13. And that was my grandmother. And a year later, my grandfather married a woman that we called Grandma Seal. We didn't keep pictures of my grandmother up because we didn't want to offend Grandma Seal. We didn't talk about Grandma Dorothy because it was just honoring my grandfather's marriage. So Acacia says, Mom or Mama, when I was a light in the sky with God, your other mother, Dorothy's light, was up in the sky with us too. So God took some of her light and put it with my light, and I got to come down and be.
Mhm. That I love that story in the book, and it's so poignant and so opening, to possibility. And you go into the idea of past lives in the book and and you know, spirits in the book. And I love that about the book too. Can you talk a little bit more about those things which have been basically not part of Western culture, that aspect of living beyond, the physical realm, we just really don't consider or the physical realm and what we can see and touch, the tactile realm, the realm.
Right. Right. I find it fascinating because, like in Mexican culture, they have the Dia de los Muertos, where they really believe that the spirits of their ancestors come back and visit. In so many other cultures, if we go to India or the Hindus, it's very typical that that's a common belief that life continues on.
Mhm.
Um, and so it was fascinating to me to speak with people that, had past life experiences.
Mhm.
And these are people that are, reputable, that this is, not anyone that's having any hallucinations or mental health issues. Um, these are real experiences. And, I think about I've been in the mental health field for 36 years. So not only have I had my own experiences, and been through hundreds and hundreds of interviews with incredible luminaries and thought leaders for their experiences, but over those 36 years, so many clients have
Mm.
shared these experiences. And, in the book, I share one particular experience and I say, I'm not a channeler or a medium or anything like that. I'm an ordinary person, like you and me, and the listeners out there, but I've had extraordinary experiences.
Yes.
And one of the ones that I had permission to share from a client of mine happened just a couple years ago. And as a trauma specialist, I do EMDR, which is a trauma protocol with clients. And in this particular session, as she was, for people that don't know EMDR, it's a protocol where you're closing your eyes and you're going back through past traumas to rewire them.
Mhm.
And so she had her eyes closed and you check in every 90 seconds. Well, for some reason, as she was sitting there with her eyes closed, I just closed my eyes for a moment. And in that moment, these two truly beings of light came down and sat next to her. I could only see them with my eyes closed.
Mm.
And I kind of laughed and I was like, okay, my mind was like, this isn't real. And interiorly, I heard a voice and it was a male's voice saying, "This is real." And I was, an avid fisherman, and I kept hearing the word sprockets.
Mm.
And when she checked in with me at those 90 seconds, I was like, "How are you doing? What's happening?" And she said, "I feel like my parents." And when she went back in, I didn't say anything. I just, let her go back in. And when I closed my eyes again for that moment, I was just filled with the deepest, purest sense of love, like radiating out from this energy source. And I know this sounds so woo woo, but I'm telling you, this is exactly what happened. This was the true experience. And it's like, you can't make this stuff up. When we got done with the session, I thought, I have to tell her. I have to tell her this happened because I had that right before she said a word. And so as we're leaving, I said, Deb, I don't usually tell people this, but I knew from our session she was such a spiritual person. And I said, I saw and felt your parents come in before I checked in. Yeah. Um, and I said, your dad kept saying he was an avid fisher. And then there's these huge tears welling up from her. And she said, "Oh my gosh, that was my dad's passion. We loved fishing." And I said, "Well, and this is weird." I said, "But I just kept hearing the word sprockets. I have no idea what that is. I have no reference point for that." And I mean, she just spilled huge tears and she She had just been at a reading for my last book that weekend before, which was Becoming Fierce. And in that, I share a story where I used to love being with my dad, and I would sit at his workbench and just nail nails into a board so I could be near him while he was working on a project. And she said, Stephanie, do you remember how you shared that story of being near your dad? As a little girl, my father worked on dairy farmers' equipment, and we would be in his workshop. And as we were working on, or as he was working on the equipment, and I was sitting beside him, we were surrounded by Scrabble. And that was a part of the melting machine. And so, again, I mean, it's giving me the chills now. It's been unbelievable. And again, it's like, it lends proof that there is something more than the eyes can see.
Yes, yes. And and kudos to you for sharing that information, because I know that, as a psychotherapist, you have to be, you have to walk the line very carefully, right? And it was delivered in a very neutral and non, you know, suggestive way, and you listened to that and shared it, and it was so helpful. So kudos to you for doing that.
Thank you.
And the other thing is, I think, and I think you think this too, you talk about it in your book, is but we really are, people are having these kinds of experiences regularly, and it's really a matter of allowing ourselves to acknowledge them. I'll briefly share. Yeah, when I was young, I had a lot of psychic experiences, like really young, like, telling my dad what he did on his business trip when I was 4, or, dreaming when the exact moment my grandfather died, and telling my mom and her freaking out, so I got the message, that this is scary, and so I shut it down, at least, at the time. But I think that, people in sharing it's not woo-woo, it's just another aspect of reality that we have not been embracing and acknowledging. And it doesn't change the rest of reality. It just opens us to more understanding and possibility. So, in the book, you do talk a little bit about how to encourage that. And I don't know if you want to share some of that. I think people are looking, they're going to get a lot of, you actually offer a lot. Like, we could talk for a couple of hours and we wouldn't get to all of the exercises and thoughts you have for people to do. But that would be great if you could share a little bit about that, folks.
Well, thank you. That was one of the things that was really important to me. At the end of every chapter, there are tapping in exercises. And so those are ways that people can take what they've read and there's specific exercises to help them really assimilate it, alchemize it into who they are so that they're having their own experiences. And you're right. When I was doing research for the book, when people were told about having these kind of experiences, 73% said they'd had these experiences, but we're not having these conversations because people are afraid of being marginalized or categorized or being called crazy. And that's why I feel like it's such an essential time that we need to be having these conversations and we need to be allowing ourselves to be connected even more so to that divine light that is, again, it's within us, it is us. We are all that spark of the divine. And I think life at times, as we know, it can feel like situations and circumstances can really cover that light within us. And so our work is really how do we excavate that light? And so there's lots of ways in the book. We live in this world where we are so distracted. Social media, the news, everything externally can really try to pull us out of being in that alignment and listening to that inner self, our highest self. And so there are meditations, there are direct exercises where it's helping to clear that conduit
Mhm.
One of the exercises that I offer in there is really around how do you befriend emotion, certain emotions. And when you have a painful emotion come up, let's say fear, for example, and this is a wonderful exercise that my dear friend and co-leader at a retreat I did a year ago in Sayulita, Mexico. Um, this is just so beautiful where you write a letter to that emotion. So it's saying that it's fear, you're writing a letter to it. And you're not just saying, oh, fear. You're saying like, I hate you. Why are you here? I can't stand that you wrecked my body and I feel so tense when you're in me or whatever needs to come out.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful exercise. But then step two of that exercise, which is really the profound piece, is after you've written that, taking some deep breaths, maybe go get a glass of water, come back and write a letter from fear to you.
Mhm.
And then you look at what is the wisdom that fear has to offer me?
Mhm.
What is that part of myself? Is it trying to protect me? Is it giving me a specific message that I haven't tuned into because I don't want to feel it? So I'm treating it like the beach ball and like I'm not that person. Or like anger. Laura, for example, a lot of people aren't comfortable with that emotion. And it's like, it's here for a reason. And as a therapist, I talk a lot with my clients about let's look at what's underneath it. Let's acknowledge it. Let's be with it. And then we call it a secondary emotion because usually it's covering sadness, embarrassment, humiliation, whatever that is, loss.
Mhm.
So we can come up to those deeper parts again by befriending and having a deeper relationship with whatever emotion presents itself.
So helpful. So helpful. And you mentioned the spark, the divine spark within, and this is a theme in your work. You talk about the eternal spark, and you have a book that you wrote called "The Spark," and a wonderful film. Um, Now, when sparks known
And
as
sparks ignite.
when
You got
sparks
it.
ignite, okay, great, yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm sparking, and I want to make sure my synapses are firing correctly. But when sparks ignite, and this is now available on Humanity's stream, and I just want to mention that because it's an inspiring film that you did with some really wonderful people, and again, just taking people into this notion of our divine selves. And can you share a little bit more about that film? Because I think folks would really enjoy it.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was also just a divine download as these things occur in my life. And it was about 6 years ago. I'd been doing a holding meditation by Lisa Hopkins, who's just a beautiful spirit and soul in this world. And about 3 months into doing that meditation, after the meditation, the voice just said, the download was, you know, some of the most brilliant minds and serving parts on the planet. We need to get them together and do this event. Now, mind you, at the time, I had just gone through a divorce and I had 67 cents in my savings.
Wow.
It was a huge calling, but yet serendipitously, all these incredible people came in to my field. I would be on a phone call and someone would say, "Oh, well, you need to here's Larry Dothby's email. Get a hold of him. Here's Padina and George Papanelli." And on one trip to Santa Fe, where I now live, um, all these incredible luminaries were just saying, yes, yes, we want to be a part of this. We believe in this. And and not only that, when I met with the Papanellis, who are television and film producers, they said, well, let us connect you with our award-winning film crew
Mm.
or a media. And so, I mean, the whole thing was so beautiful. And the the main point of that film is really, and it's so apropos for today,
Mm.
because it's about the difficult and challenging times that we face that can then become the match point that ignites something within us that becomes our gift to the world. And so the beautiful thing about that film as well is that the thought leaders and these beautiful luminaries that came, we met 3 days ahead of time. So well, it was 3 days altogether, excuse me, 2 days ahead of time. And so we were having our own experience together. We
Yeah.
prayed together. We meditated together. We ate meals together. We danced together. we just had this incredible experience, and really there was this alchemy created. So the second day, and you see this in the film, we sat around a big round table. There were 12 of us,
Mhm.
and we called it like it's of the round table. And we really shared deep personal. I mean, these are people that people don't know what their fears were, or the negative experiences. Jacob Lieberman, who is this incredible luminary, sharing about having panic attacks for 9 years. And then how do we not only overcome those challenges, but then how do we then create a tipping point? And that's the essence of all my work, Laura, is that, on the front of the film poster, it says your period healing period matters, period. Because each one of us are essential golden threads in the tapestry of humanity. And so as we heal, we add to that higher vibration. We're raising the frequency. And so many times right now, people are coming to me, clients, and saying, I feel so overwhelmed. I feel so helpless with what's going on in the world. And what can I do? And the reality is that we can't always change a war going on right now. We can't always change what's going on in the world climate, but it starts with that inward journey. How do we ignite and light that spark within us? And as
Mm.
we continue to clear out that conduit, then we can bring more light and love to the world through each and every encounter. It's how we show up. It's how
That's
we treat the person that's packing our groceries or handing us our coffee, or the person that cuts us off in traffic.
right.
How are we treating and showing up? So that's the essence of that film. The third day, we brought it to a live audience. So you see kind of, I love the saying, like, we never know the sparks we're going to ignite in another.
Right.
And I think that's our calling, Laura, right now. I mean, there really is this call for us to show up and to do the work. And it's not about, we can't change anybody else, but we can say, okay, I'm going to allow my feeling to be a priority in my life. And that doesn't mean at the exclusion of other people. It means I'm willing to do the deep dive and the work necessary because I want to let that spark that is me help illuminate the world.
So important. And, and a perspective on that too is that when we do, people, I think, get overwhelmed by thinking they have to do something to save the world, or they have to do, it's going to be so hard to do something. And really, when you give yourself permission to do the deeper work, which that can be frightening. It can be daunting, but it doesn't have to be. But when you take that time and you look at, you know, curating myself, like cultivating my inner peace and healing, as you say, these aspects of myself makes me a greater conduit. It enables me to hold more light and to be present for the light that I encounter. And then something that you're doing that is really important, and I think it is absolutely key at this time in our evolution, globally, as humans, and as cultures, as everything, is coming together in community. Community is what is going to save us. So we heal ourselves and we come together with communities that are supportive and healing. And that's how we do it. My 2 cents.
That's it. I love it. No, that's giving me absolute chills because that is it. It's like when we heal, we don't just do this in a vacuum.
Right.
This is truly about contributing to the collective because we
Yeah.
really are all in this together.
Hmm.
And this is the way that we can really connect and unite and be connected to this universal family that we truly are part of.
Yes. Yes. And you have another another event coming up in the fall, which I'm honored to be joining. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? I know it's still we're still formulating a lot of the details, but that probably by the time this podcast is out, it's going to be well formulated and being advertised.
Yes, wonderful. So I'm excited to be able to give the total thumbs up and affirm that we are doing the divine inside. The secondary title is Soul Collected to Ignite Your Matri Heart. And for people that don't know what the matri part is, it really is, it's that divine part. Some people would call it the mother's heart, but it really is a heart that knows no gender. It's the compassionate, absolutely unconditional love that we can experience within ourselves and with one another.
Mm.
And so this incredible retreat is happening September 19th, 20th, and 21st here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I'm so excited to have you and Isa with us. And we just are having some incredible other contributors coming in. And that's exactly what it's about. I mean, it is a retreat. It's feeling the feelers and not just feeling the feelers. It's for everyone exactly where they're at. But even if you consider yourself, a therapist or a healer or someone who already does this, we all can really look at those parts of ourselves that we're like, oh yeah, there's a little cobweb there. I want to help remove that from the conduit. And just how we need everyone's collective light. Because it's from events like this where things can really get ignited. And then each person, each attendant becomes then the light bearer that
Mm.
takes it out into the world.
Yes, yes, and I love, and just to riff on your metaphors, like we're sparking sparks. You know, when I talk to you, I'm sparked. When you talk to other people, you're sparked. It's catching, and it's really wonderful. So I'm excited to be part of it, and I'm very excited to have you here. Anything else that you want to share about? Anything that you're looking forward to or hoping to see happen?
Well, I would say, I mean, right now, I'm just loving so much doing interviews and connections like this. This has just been such a joy. And I would just say, my transformational coaching is really taking off, which really allows me to have a little different bent. As you know, there's not as many confines as you have just as a psychotherapist. And
Mhm.
so really opening up that practice where we're bringing in Kundalini yoga, we're bringing in pranayama breath work,
Mhm.
Reiki healing, some different modalities so that it's really moving people in 12 sessions. I've got 12 design sessions,
Mhm.
also entitled The Divine Inside,
Yeah.
transformational coaching. But it's so beautiful. It's really fine tailored to each individual to help them to move.
Mm.
And so, one of the ways people can get a hold of me is
Yeah.
I do have a free gift for all of your listeners.
Great.
If they go to my website, which is stephaniejames.world,
Mhm.
so stephaniejames.world, and there's a free gift that you just put in your email and it's sent directly to you. And it's an audio recording of a guided chakra mo- uh, meditation and activation.
Oh,
So
thank
it's only about 10 minutes long, but when I was giving this to my clients, they all said, "Could you please record this, what when we do it during session?" So I finally did, and I just am so happy to share that with your audience. It's a really beautiful grounding tool of how we can come into our morning and be fully alive, we fully live out.
great. Love that. We'll have that, on our website as well on the podcast, include links. And the book is Your Big Fat Juicy Life, Stephanie James. Fantastic book, wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for making the time, and I'm gonna look forward to many more conversations and our time together in September.
Me too. Thank you so much. Thank you. It was such a joy, Laura.
And with you as well. Thank you.